everyone, and welcome to another episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and tonight I'm having, you might need some tissues when we talk about this story. It will be tissues for tears of joy, but this is a pretty fun episode and a pretty special episode. I have Tom joining me tonight. How you doing, Tom?
I'm good, Jesse. How about you?
I am doing great. Um, so Tom and his lovely bride Kelly are both writers, and they posted a. They were lucky enough to meet Bruce at a signing, and they posted, "Dear Bruce, the thing we wanted to say." And I read this and I immediately said, "Oh, got to have you on the podcast, got to have you on the podcast." And Tom was nice enough to say, "Yeah, we'd love to." So once again, thank you very much for joining me.
No problem.
So
Glad to be here.
before we get to kind of the rest of the story, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about your musical background. So,
Okay.
by the way, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure.
And,
My name is Tom French. I'm a journalist and a professor in Bloomington, Indiana. My wife is Kelly French. She's also a journalist and a professor. And we've just written a book together called Juniper. That's about the 6 months that our daughter spent inside a neonatal intensive care unit when she was born 4 months too early.
and so um, I'm looking forward to kind of talking about that. And
Okay.
boy, the reviews about the book have been very kind.
Yeah,
So
they've been really, really nice.
it is on my Kindle wish list, and so I'm planning to. I don't know. I may have you on again after I read it. So,
Great.
but
Happy to do it.
so let's start out with growing up. Tom, was did you did your family listen to a lot of music? And if so, what kind of music did they listen to?
Um, I'm the oldest of five, so I was kind of the one who had to start out listening
Mm-hmm.
to rock and roll. My dad and mom were more like Barbra Streisand, Liza Minnelli fans,
Right.
and so I just started, listening to music when I was in middle school or junior high, and Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, Elton John, all the classic '70s bands.
What what year did you graduate from high school?
'76.
Okay, so I graduated in 77, so you and I
Okay.
are in sync. We grew up top 40 radio, right?
Yep.
That was kind of where we fed our addiction. Uh, Casey Kasem, I don't know about you, but Sundays at Casey Kasem was always
Mm-hmm.
something I
Sure.
enjoyed listening and hearing the stories and such. Um, we've Tom, we've talked a lot about this podcast about siblings, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up because we either I will have the people and my guests will share the story that, well, my older brother, older sister um, shared with me and brought me into that music, and it almost is that scene from Almost Famous where the kid pulls the albums his sister left for him, and then the other half of the people will call and say, well, I was the oldest, and then therefore it was up to me to kind of set the tone
Yep.
for, my younger brothers and sisters. Um, it, it is a big responsibility kind of when you notice, isn't it?
It is. But you mentioned that scene in Almost Famous, and even though I didn't have an older sister to leave behind your copy of Tommy, I identified so intensely with that scene in Cameron Crowe's movie when I saw it, because Tommy was the first real album that I bought. And but yeah, I really was trying to set a tone, and you don't know what you're doing, when you're 12 or 13.
Right.
So you're just kind of giving it your best shot. But I knew that when I listened to Tommy and to some of those albums that I was on the right track.
What's funny is Pet Sounds is what connected me. I am a My other obsession besides Bruce Springsteen is Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys, and to see Pet Sounds on that was I kind of squealed inside the movie theater like, oh look. um
Mm-hmm.
and I think that, and for a lot of us growing up, whether no matter where we were in the family, that's such an iconic um, vision of that this is ours, this isn't our parents. And my mom and dad, my mom loved Fats Domino and Bobby Darin, so she had a little bit of early rock and roll. My dad
Right.
listened to both kinds of music, as they say in the Blues
Right.
Brothers, country and western. Um, but it wasn't this hatred of rock and roll. It just was not something that hit into the house. Um,
Yeah, I can identify with that totally.
yeah. Um,
I mean, my mom, when I asked her to help me get a copy of Tommy and then of Who's Next, I can remember she was totally flabbergasted because she couldn't understand what the name of the band was. She said, I have to go to the store and it's like, it's like who's on first. And it just totally flummoxed her that the band's name was The Who. But, listening to that album and to others, like you just said, it felt like there were these voices out of the darkness, out of, I guess, this undefined future of growing up that seemed to be like pointing you forward. And I remember listening to Tommy and listening to those other albums so closely and studying the album covers, every detail, like looking for signs or messages or something to try to help me figure out how I was supposed to be whoever I was going to be.
I totally agree. And in helping, this, I went through a phase where all my friends were listening to Kiss, and so I was listening to these Kiss albums, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's one of the reasons why the Beach Boys were so amazing to me is when I graduated from high school, I picked up Endless Summer, which was a collection from Capitol of a lot of their hits, and I'd never heard harmony like that. I'd never
Mm-hmm.
had that kind of emotion. Um, it is, yeah, and then Queen, and as you said, Elton John, and the Who, and it was just, it was a whole nother world that you just were enjoying and learning. Um, so Tom, how did you find Bruce?
I was in my freshman year of college at Indiana University, and it was February of '77. And a friend of mine from high school back in Indianapolis said, there's this concert with Bruce Springsteen at the convention center. We should go. And I didn't know anything about Springsteen's music other than I'd seen him on the cover of Time and Newsweek the previous, like a year before or so.
Right.
And I wasn't that, I was fine going, but I wasn't that, excited or anything. And there was an ice storm the night of the concert. And so it was actually pretty treacherous getting down to downtown Indianapolis to get to the show. Excuse me. And there were cars sliding all over the place into the ditch. And once we got inside, there were very few people in the arena, maybe 2,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then the lights went down, and he came out, and they opened with Night. And it was, I was never the same from that moment on. I just couldn't quite believe what I was seeing. It was just so powerful. He was such an amazing performer. And when on the third song, which was Spirit in the Night, he came out into the audience, he was just a few feet away from me, and I was just stunned at what I was seeing, at how powerful it was, and just inspiring. And I went home afterwards, and I bought. There were only three albums at that point. I bought all three,
Yes.
and I started listening to them and studying them, and and this is this kind of very long, quiet period between Born to Run and Darkness, and
Yes.
just waited for that next album to come out. And in the meantime, started listening to Southside Johnny, listened to Patti Smith doing "Because the Night," and we were just so hungry for for anything new from him, from Springsteen. And then when Darkness came out, it was all over. It was all over actually the moment he walked out on stage that night in February of '77. But yeah,
Yeah, you know, um, it's a cliche, but there's a lot of truth to it. And I just was explaining to this somebody, well, like, how did you become this, passionate Springsteen fan? And I said, well, the story is there's two kinds of people. People go to their first Bruce show and go, wow, that was long, or wow, that was pretty interesting. And then there's the rest of us that go, oh my goodness, what,
yeah,
when can I see him again? Let's
right.
sell everything I own and let's follow them around.
Right.
Um, it,
I
it,
became that person.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so I always mention that I do not believe the amount of times you've seen Bruce live is a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are, but
Right,
because there are massive fans that have never had the opportunity to see him. But
right.
just, kind of thing, do you have a count?
I don't have an exact count. I've gone back a couple of times over the decades and tried to get an exact count, but I haven't done that recently. I know that I'm somewhere in the mid 90s.
Okay.
I'm approaching 100, but I'm
Oh,
not sure how close I am
okay.
exactly.
That's nice. Um, so, um, do you have
Can I go
you?
back to something you were asking
Yeah,
about
please.
a second ago, Jesse? I'm sorry.
Yes. No, no, no,
You were talking
please.
about sort of evangelizing with the music with your younger siblings. I mean, the next time I saw him was in Indianapolis again in '78 once the new album came out, and I took my little sister, who was I think 9 at the time, and that was the night when they were doing 10th Avenue Freeze Out for an encore, and Clarence brought out some strippers from a nearby club called the Red Garter,
Yes.
and and it was just kind of crazy. But my sister, thankfully, had fallen asleep by that point.
Oh, how funny.
And then I started taking my other siblings, and then I got I took them all to their first show. I took my brother Ben when he was just a kid, and I took my mom and I took my dad, and now my whole family goes, and I've taken my sons. And when Kelly and I got married, it was kind of one of the deals is that she's a huge animal person, and I had to be willing to accept fostering for animals and so forth in our lives. Well, she had to be accept going on tour following Springsteen, which she loves to do. She fell into it completely. But
Okay.
that it's a whole family thing in our lives.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story, and um, I love the idea that as you're talking about, you know, getting married and starting a life together with someone, okay, not let's talk the important things. Do you sleep on the right hand of the sit bed, the left hand of the bed? Are you a Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? Christmas
Those are
opens,
crucial.
and then we we will go see Bruce Springsteen, right? I mean, that's I think that's amazing, but I'm in a mixed marriage. My wife was at that same show in 2002, was the first time I was lucky enough to see him just due to circumstances growing up in Louisiana
Hmm.
and just had never seen him.
Right,
As a parent, you know, I, I missed the chances in the 70s and 80s. And then when we moved to Dallas in 86, anytime he came by, there was always something going on with our son or didn't have the money. And so I didn't see
right.
him till the Rising tour. And she went, I don't know any of the songs. You know,
Hmm.
she was happy he did Cadillac Ranch, and like she was like,
Right.
I didn't know anything else, and she had no interest in seeing him ever again. And she puts up with my obsession.
Uh huh.
She's now kind of adopted seeing him live. She enjoys. I think it helped that she loved Wrecking Ball as an album,
Right.
and then we went to his shows, and so she's kind of embraced the fact that this 60 something year old guy is doing 3.5, 4 hour shows, she's
Yeah.
amazed with it. But
Right.
for a while there, we had kind of a mixed marriage, but that we kind of lived through it. So,
Right.
um, I think, um, I think it's kind of cool that you guys, do foster care for pets, and it kind of goes together, right? Of taking care of each other.
Yeah.
So I want to hear about the book, and I want to hear about the book appearance story, but maybe a little bit first, is there any favorite songs or albums that mean a lot to you? And then kind of share a Juniper story with me or my
Okay.
listeners.
Well, the joke in my family among my siblings is that I love all of the albums and that I'm not very discriminating
Right,
in these later years. My siblings make fun of me, but I really do. There's something I just love, and I think in almost every album, not every
right.
album. But my favorite remains "Born to Run." The
Okay.
older I get, the more I really come to think that "Wild the Innocent the Eastern Shuffle" is just an unusual document
Hmm.
of somebody who, my understanding is, he doesn't even know how to read music, and that's such a sophisticated, interesting, mature album coming out of such a young writer, and I grow increasingly interested in that one. But
Okay.
Born to Run is my favorite. Um, I I love the songs from that one. Backstreets and Thunder Road are probably my favorite song with Born to Run, I guess. In terms of my favorite songs, I'm very partial to Racing in the Streets. I
Okay.
think that's just an amazing, amazing song. I love Wrecking Ball. I'm gonna second your opinion. You said your
Yeah.
wife embraces
Oh, I
Wrecking
love
Ball.
the album
It's
too.
a
I think
great song.
it's a great song, and I love the album, and I think it's fascinating that this late in his career, he was still had something to say and was sharing his
Oh
passion
yeah,
and a message I think is very inspiring.
it really. I mean, it's just an amazing song.
Yeah.
Um, the what I've really been taken with lately is, I mean, you'll understand this, and your listeners will understand this, but
Yeah.
nobody else does. I've been listening to those outtakes from the river,
Yes.
and I am really, really blown away by them. And
Yes.
I mean, to me, there's like a solid third disc
Right.
um, sitting there that he had the discipline, I guess, to not release. And I listened to some of those songs, and I just think they're just brilliant. There's this one, White Town. I listened to that song, that opening stanza where he talks about this woman walking on the street and the sense of unhappiness in her life going nowhere. It's just really pervasive in the song. But then he talks about, each and every day, the minutes pass away or the days pass away. And and then, a passing car, she hears a melody and she starts to sway. There's something about that song that
Hmm.
I just find really, really powerful.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of the outtakes. I've been listening to that and obsessing over that for most of the past year or so.
That's
In
that's
terms of in
awesome.
concert, my two favorites are I love Racing in the Streets, and the ending of Racing in the Streets with Roy's piano rising and rising
Hmm.
is to me just one of the most beautiful pieces of music there can be. Um, but my absolute favorite in concert, and all my siblings make fun of me because they say it's a dumb song, and I shouldn't be so obsessed with it. And I'm not going to try and claim that it's like his greatest song. It's just a song that when he plays it live, I love it, and it's Ramrod. I
Okay.
love Ramrod live, and for me, that's the mark of a great night as he plays Ramrod at the end.
How funny. That's
Again,
awesome.
I yeah, I recognize it's not his greatest song or his most profound song, but I just feel like that just song just goes, and I just love that song. So yeah, but I really enjoy just something off of all of his albums,
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed seeing, he goes out solo and he does, Devils and Dust, or what's always blows me away is how free he is in these later shows, in these later tours. I mean, I loved him in those early tours, but there was a strain. You could feel it, him trying really hard to be great,
Yeah,
and a sense of perfectionism. And now he's moved past all that. He's out there, he's enjoying it, and he's fearless on stage. And sometimes I've seen him start a song and he doesn't get it quite right, and he says, "Ah, that didn't quite work. Let's try it again."
yeah,
And I love that. I mean, it was a little bit like Patti Smith the other day singing "A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall" for Dylan at the Nobel ceremony. That was very powerful when she stopped and she said, I'm so nervous. I'm sorry, I messed up." And she kept going. Because at that point, the audience is behind her and they're behind Springsteen when it happens, because all of us mess up. All of us are imperfect. And the idea is you keep going. Doesn't matter. You keep going.
yeah. And I love them. I think as you talk about Wrecking Ball, I think that also that feeling of come on, give me your best shot, show me what you
Hmm.
got, is feels that, and I could see that. I know. Did you see any of the Complete River tour shows?
Yes. In fact, we took Juniper to one of the shows
Okay,
in Louisville because we promised her after she got out of the hospital, we promised her that if she got out of there, we would take her to see him, and we did. And we took her to see the show in Louisville, and she loved it. She fell asleep. She was only 4 at the time,
right.
and she fell asleep. Oh, it was around Not Fade Away that she fell asleep. But up
Yeah,
until then, she was all in, and she was loving it, and she can't wait to see him again.
that is awesome. Um, I was at the Louisville show. I, and you will understand this though no one else does, or maybe just other fans. When the show had ended and everyone was starting to go backstage, and you actually could see um, Max giving out his drumstick, and Bruce
Hmm.
straps on the guitar for Bobby Jean. It
Hmm.
You could tell that this was not planned. He was just
Right.
like, "Hey, I got one more song I want to do," and
Yeah.
and it was like finding a present underneath the Christmas tree on December 26th. I mean, not even Christmas night. Like it was just like,
Right.
oh, I can't believe we're getting one more song. It
Yeah.
it it was such a joy that
Yeah.
you got that.
Those moments are great.
Yes. Um.
I saw him do that in South Bend in 1978.
Okay.
He was obsessed with the movie Animal House, which had come out that summer. They played Louie Louie and they played Double Shot of My Baby's Love, and he kept talking about frat rock.
Hmm.
And it was just a really fun show. And then they finished up the night, and and the lights were up, and they were starting to take down the stage, and the band came out again because people wouldn't leave, and they did Twist and Shout. And it was, oh boy, it was great.
And do you think that um do you think that's one of the reasons why he does shout is because he loves the movie?
Maybe. He talked a lot in that show about how much fun the movie was.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
Because my son is 27, and he went
Okay.
to his first show this year. He went up to Oklahoma City with me, and
How cool.
he became a fan. We then both went to Jersey and saw the August 25th show. Um,
Hmm.
and he was really fun. He was first off, he said, "You have to be ready." He says, because Bruce doesn't play between songs. I mean, he finishes a song, and within the last few notes of the song, he's starting the next one. And he
Yeah.
says, he doesn't play. He's ready to go. And if you're not ready, he also made the joke that he wishes the Dallas Cowboy receivers could catch the ball as good as Kevin does those guitars. He
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
uh, but he did say, he goes, "What's the deal with shout?" He says, "I felt like I was in a seventh grade, you know, um, dance. And I said, I don't know. He just loves the show, loves the song. So maybe that's why. Maybe you've come up with a reason because of his love for Animal House.
Yeah,
Um,
it's fun.
I I believe that you talked about how much joy he's having, and I believe the whole band. And I don't know if it's because this is the tour that wasn't supposed to happen, or if it was David Bowie dying so at the beginning of the tour,
And
and,
Prince too.
and then
Yeah.
Prince, but of they seem to be playing in a way that time is precious, and
Yep.
we do not know how many more times we will get to do this together. And
Yep.
so I'm going to live in the moment that this is all I have. To get overly sentimental, or to kind of do a philosophy of, life is a journey and you've got to enjoy that journey. They just seem to be very much in the presence and saying, I'm loving this and having a blast.
Well, Jesse, and he says, there's that line in Glorious where he says, "Tonight I'm going to go down to the well and I'm going to drink till I get my fill."
Yeah.
That's what they're doing every night.
Yes. I think you're totally right. And I just love that joy that they see. And
Yep.
and the and I was a big fan of the Wrecking Ball, High Hopes, E Street Orchestra. I love the horn section. I love the backup singers. I love that fullness. But
Yep.
this kind of new core band, which is still pretty big, had some amazing sounds, and they've done a wonderful job with. I love Susie's vocals and her violin, and Charlie has taken over for Danny, and then with Jake it just seems this new core band seems to do a lot of things just really well.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I watch. There's that video of them in Germany doing "You Never Can Tell,"
Right.
and I guess that was a bigger rendition of the band. But there's that moment when he invites the horn players down to solo, and then he calls down Jake, and then they're suddenly improvising a dance, and
Yeah.
it's just the amount of joy there is so bottomless. And I use that video in my writing class. I teach writing and I teach
Okay.
storytelling because I'm basically showing, okay, how do you adapt something? How do you outline something in front of 60, 70,000 people? And how
Right.
do you figure out how to tell a story in the moment? And
Mhm.
because he says at the end, Springsteen says at the end, we made it up out of nothing.
Right.
And yeah, I'm loving these performances of the last few years.
So, um, Tom, one of my frequent guests is a guy named Jay Ferguson, who is actually a high school English teacher. He teach advanced English and AP English, and he was on the show about a month or so ago, and we actually discussed Thunder Road, comparing it to The Road Not Taken, the Frost poem.
Mhm. Great.
And because he said that Thunder Road is a choice. The song is all about giving that choice. We can stay where we are, we can move forward, and how you have to, as adults, is filled with choices. And so at the very end of the episode, as he finished going through the poem, the way he would cover it in his school, he asked the question, does Mary get in the car?
hmm
So,
I use Thunder Road in my teaching as well,
oh, do
and
you?
and I ask my students the same question: does she get in the car?
So I will, well, this is fascinating. Um, what do they say? And then what's your opinion?
I think I think almost everybody thinks she gets in the car. Some of the women don't really like the line, you're no beauty, but hey, you're all right.
Right.
Um, they think that's kind of a some of them they think that's it's not that they want the man to shower them with just adoring comments about their gorgeousness, they find it a little bit just off-putting.
Right.
Other people find it very charming that he's saying neither of us is like some superhero. In
Right.
a way, he's going back to lines in Backstreet's where he says, we learned we couldn't walk like those heroes we thought we had to be.
Yeah.
Um, but most of the people who I ask think that she gets in the car, and I think she gets in the car.
So,
I'm sure
um,
of it.
yeah, I'm a man who grew up on Walt Disney movies, and so I am a optimist. Jay doesn't think she gets in the car, and he thinks that's one of the reasons why he loves the song so much. Um,
Mm,
and um, and I even it's funny because when Bruce sings it live, often he'll say, "We're pulling out of here to win," but on the actual album lyrics, it's "I'm
mm-hmm.
pulling out of here to win," and
Yep.
so he's left it specifically vague. And as I told Jave, as a kid in high school who hated the Princess of the Tiger short story, like, no, I want to know an answer.
Right.
I was the vagueness.
Right.
That's great. All right, so tell me um, your lovely daughter's story.
Okay. So I have two sons from a first marriage who are, you said you had a 27-year-old son. I've got a 28-year-old son and a 25-year-old son.
Okay.
And I got remarried 10 years ago. And Kelly, to a younger woman, Kelly's 16 years younger than me, and absolutely ferocious, amazing, brilliant person. And she really, really wanted to have a baby. And I resisted getting married for a long time and did my best to sabotage that relationship because I just thought I was too old. I was too old to be a dad again. I love being a dad, but
Right.
I thought I was in the runway. My kids were in high school and in college. I thought, I was going to go to Greece and float in the waters off of Greece. I was going to go to Barcelona and see Springsteen in Barcelona and
Right.
Dublin. Um, you know, but here was Kelly, and she was like, no, you were meant to be with me, and you were meant to have a baby with me. And after some come to Jesus moments with myself, um, all of this is in the book, by the way.
Okay.
Excuse me. The book begins with me doing that sabotaging behavior, and I'm the villain at the beginning of the book. I'm my worst self, and it's not pleasant writing about some of your worst behavior, but it's really important to understand how this all unfolded. So I finally had my come to Jesus moment and got married to Kelly, and we started trying to have a baby, and we struggled, and then finally we had to go through fertility treatments, and those weren't working, so we found a donor who gave us an egg, and then finally Kelly got pregnant. And her pregnancy was going great until she was halfway through, and then one day she started hemorrhaging, and suddenly we're in the emergency room, and they're afraid we're going to lose the baby. And the baby was trying to come way too early, like 20 weeks. And if a
Mm.
baby is born at 20 weeks gestation, it cannot survive at this
Okay.
point. The absolute boundary of viability right now is 23 weeks. Sometimes I guess 22 weeks, but 23 weeks back then. And they told us, in fact, that Kelly had to hang on until she got to 24 weeks, or there was no chance. So they were doing various things to try to delay the labor. But
Right.
finally, when she was 23 weeks and 6 days, they couldn't forestall it any longer, and she gave birth. And Juniper was born at 1 pound 4 ounces.
Wow.
Her eyes were still fused shut. She looked like a little baby bird that had fallen out of its nest too soon.
Mm.
Her skin was translucent. You could see her organs inside. You could see her heart beating. She had no fat, no body fat at all. She was just to the point in her development where she was just edging into consciousness.
Mm.
And so, like, if you think of the cerebral cortex and all the wrinkles on our brain, preemies, micro preemies at that point don't have those wrinkles. They're just beginning to edge into something approaching awareness and consciousness.
Mm.
She could hear, but her eyes were still fused shut, so she couldn't see. And she could feel our touch, but we had to be very careful because they told us that if you rubbed her skin, it might fall off.
Wow.
The plates in her skull were more soft than solid. She's just very, very young, coming out of the womb way too early. And so the book is really about that process and what happened. And they had told us there was an 80% chance that she was either going to die or was going to have some kind of a serious disability. And in fact, they gave us the choice of whether we wanted to have her resuscitated or not.
Hmm.
And, and that was a very tough choice because one of the possibilities was that if we said yes, we want them to fight for her, she could have ended up spending the rest of her life paralyzed or with some really serious problem that could have made it just extremely her quality of life, just not
Right.
what she would have wanted or what we would have wanted for. So in some ways, we were kind of wondering if it was selfish of us to want
Sure.
to fight for her. But
So hang on, Tom.
we did vote for that. Yeah.
Okay, guys. So, and I obviously don't want to spoil everything on the book, but I'm sure there is a rash of emotions that, here you were kind of reluctant to be a father again. I will tell you, Chris was at 12 years old and, kind of talking about having a brother or a sister. And he was a dude. You just are not, you don't even try. I mean, that is a no discussion.
Hmm.
And all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're engaged, you're sitting there going, yes, I'm involved and I'm going for it. And then all of a sudden there's something, this little girl that years, at the beginning of this journey, you weren't sure you wanted. Now then you've seen her. It just must break your heart going, but now that I have you, I can't imagine losing you.
That's, I mean, you're right. It's a very emotional story. And for me, it was, we, both Kelly and I brought totally different backgrounds and experiences to this. And that's one of the reasons that we wrote the book. She has a chapter, and then I'll have a chapter, and then
Hmm.
she'll have a chapter, and we alternate back and forth because we experienced it very differently,
Yeah.
both because of our respective biologies, but also because of our sensibilities. And for me, the scariest moment was walking up to the incubator for the first time
Hmm.
because I'd seen pictures of 23-week babies, and they're kind of those pictures are frightening because
Sure.
the babies look almost alien.
Right.
And I was worried that she was going to look so alien that I would not be able to recognize her as my daughter and that I wouldn't bond with her.
Hmm.
And as somebody who is defined by by being a dad, the idea that I would not be able to bond with my daughter just filled me with dread. So when I was leaving from the delivery room up to the NICU, that dread was just overwhelming me. And so I walked up to the incubator, and it was very terrifying. And then I looked inside, and the doctors and nurses were working on her, and um, and then I sat down, and one of the nurses said, you can hold her hand if you want. If you wash, I'd already washed my hands once. You have to wash them again. And I just reached into this little window in the incubator and put the pinky of my left hand, the tip of it, into her right palm, which was open, and she instantly squeezed on. And in that one moment, Jesse, all of my doubts just fell away. All of my fears about not bonding with her, because I saw how unfinished she was. I mean, I could see what a struggle she was going to have to make it. But I also saw all of these possibilities.
Hmm.
This person she could become. I just saw how beautiful she was, and I don't mean beautiful like a Hollywood beautiful. I mean beautiful because she was alive and she was here, and who knew who she was going to become if she had the chance.
Yes.
And I saw her, and her grip was so strong, Jesse. And I remember thinking, why is she so strong while I'm so weak
Yeah.
and so afraid? And I thought, she's just a work in progress, but so am I. And I fell in love in that, like in an instant. I just totally fell head over heels for this little girl. And that was the last. There was never any doubt, no matter how it had gone, that I was going to be happy to have had a chance to get to know her, even if it was only for a day or a week or a month. I would have preferred that to not getting a chance to know this child. And I went back down to the recovery room where Kelly was still recovering from the surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept saying, she's beautiful. She's just absolutely beautiful. Kelly was looking at me thinking, this poor man is delusional.
Yeah.
But it was very emotional. And of course, we were terrified that she wasn't going to make it.
Right.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, you know,
And there were many times when we almost
yeah,
lost her. But
sure.
I really felt that I was going to be grateful to have known her, even if I was filled with grief. I was glad I got to see and hold the hand of this little girl.
That brings back one of my favorite lines from Neil Gaiman in his miniseries Death. A young infant dies and death comes to get her, and the infant says, "Is that all it is?" And she said, Death, who in Neil Gaiman's, this Sandman stories, is a young woman. I don't know if you've read this comics, and Death
Yes,
says, "You get what all of us get, a lifetime."
right,
And I'm actually tearing up to think about it. Tom, you're saying I am going to know her whole life, and if that life is only a short amount of time, she's still my daughter, and I am here for her life. That must have been incredibly emotional and definitely, pushing your faith in the powers that be, whatever you want to call it, life itself, right?
right.
Yeah,
Well, in this NICU, it's a level 4 NICU.
yeah,
Babies were dying all around us,
yeah.
and babies who were bigger and stronger than Juniper.
Mm,
And I remember one day when a baby in the incubator just across a few feet away from us, when that baby died, I remember thinking that this floor of the hospital was engulfed in this cloud of randomness, and
mm-hmm,
that maybe death just I literally had this idea that maybe death was playing tag with these babies,
mm,
and he just tagged this baby a few feet away, and maybe he was turning his attention toward Juniper right at that moment.
yeah,
And I really, obviously, these were terrifying thoughts. But one of the things that Kelly and I realized we had to figure out was, how do you parent a child who, early on at least, she can't see you, you can't pick her up, you can't, because she's attached to all these lines and the ventilator and
right,
everything. She's just too fragile at first. And how do you bond with her and help her understand that there's a world waiting outside this darkness that she's living in? Because, again, her eyes weren't open.
yeah,
And there's a world outside of this box that she's in, this incubator. And so one of the things that we started to do was to read to her. I started reading to her from Harry Potter
okay,
on one of her worst nights. And I started playing for Springsteen. And, playing these, I got a little mini iPod and put it in her incubator.
mm-hmm,
And I play these songs. And micropreemies are very unusual in that they're very sensitive to emotion, and their emotional internal state is reflected very acutely in one of the numbers on their monitor. It's called a SAT number, SAT,
okay,
and
okay,
it just means the saturation of oxygen in their blood. It refers to how efficiently they're breathing,
okay,
and you could tell when she liked or didn't like something. Now that may be the wrong word to use for a baby that
right,
size, but if something made her feel distress or something was comforting to her, the number would go up or down
mm,
instantly. And I was reading to her from Harry Potter, and I came to the first section where Hagrid is featured,
yeah,
and I started reading sort of a rough Hagrid voice. and her sat number plummeted instantly. And Kelly said, "Stop it! You're scaring the baby." And I was like, "No way." And then I tried it again, and again she dropped. And so I resolved at that point I was going to read everything in Harry Potter, even the Dementors and Lord Voldemort, in a sweet sing-songy voice.
Right.
And so when I started playing Springsteen songs for her and other songs for her, you could tell which ones were her favorites, if you want to use that term. Her favorite, it's too ironic, but it's true. Her favorite was "Waiting on a Sunny Day." That was the song that she sat at the highest for every time, and it was perfect because she'd never seen the sun.
Right.
She was in a dark room, and even when her eyes opened, she'd never felt the sun in her skin. And she loved that song, and I loved playing that song for her. And Thunder Road and 10th Avenue Freeze Out and Wild Billy's Circus. And when the first time I got to hold her, I didn't even know I was going to get the hold of that day. And then suddenly the nurse is handing her to me, and I'm sitting in a chair. And I'm sitting down, and of course, what comes out of my mouth are the lyrics of Thunder Road.
Sure.
And I got to tell you, it was a pretty raggedy version,
Yeah.
but but it was what I had. So
That
it really is wonderful.
that is wonderful. So, and skipping ahead, right? Then she's slowly gaining weight. By
Yep.
the way, a really good friend of mine, um, Ken and Laurel, had Parker was a preemie. I do not remember how many weeks, but I know it was um, early, and they spent, tons of time in the hospital. And um, by nature, I'm an optimist, and I said, Ken, just think in your mind that he is going to ask you one day, now tell me again, how little was I? Tell me the
Mm-hmm.
story about this. I said, just picture him, and Parker graduated from high school in May. And what's funny is, he's sharp as a tack, but he's always smaller than everyone else in his class. He never caught up all the way together, but
Right.
he do,
Juniper's always going to be small,
yeah. So
but she's doing great.
that is awesome. So you've not only the love that her big brothers have for her and you and your bride, but the music of not just Bruce, but I'm sure other musicians, this had this kind of, and I'm sure, have a little faith, there's magic in the night, right? Um,
Yep.
I would be quoting, Land of Hope and Dreams. In fact, when I met Bruce on December 1st and I got my 4 seconds with him at a book signing in Austin, Texas, what he did
Mm-hmm.
not hear me say, because, it was so quick, but I needed to say is, last year I spent 7 months unemployed, and I listened to Better Days and Land of Hope and Dreams almost daily, and that helped me keep faith while I was searching for a job. Um,
That's wonderful.
and that's, and as I said, I needed to say it more than I needed him to hear it.
Mm-hmm. I get
So
that.
yeah. So how long was she in the hospital for?
She was there for 6 months,
Wow.
and it wasn't until about 4.5 months in that they even gave us any hope that she was going to make it out of there alive. Um, and so I was sitting in that darkened room with her, reading to her and singing Springsteen songs to her. And I mean, I got to be honest. I was thanking Springsteen
Yeah.
just for giving us these songs and this joy and this sense of something more, because that's what we wanted for Juniper. We wanted her to feel a sense of there's a whole world out there waiting for you,
Yeah.
and you can't feel the sun on your skin yet, but just hang in there and you will. And he doesn't know my daughter. He met her briefly in the book signing, but he doesn't know my daughter. He didn't write these songs for her, but that's not how she sees it. So music is so personal. Afterwards, Kelly asked her, because it was so quick meeting him in the bookstore at Harvard, that she said, "Well, were you disappointed?" And she said, No, she said because I know he loves me and he wrote those songs for me.
Uh,
And I love that idea that that's how she sees it. And he didn't write them for her. He wrote them for a lot of people, but to her, it's a personal gift, and to us, it was as well. When we played these songs in the NICU, Bruce's songs and Otis Redding and the Beatles and Bob Dylan, um, the songs were our prayers.
yeah,
They were our way of hanging on.
yeah. I mean, I think of the scene in after 9/11 when they're doing that telethon,
Mm-hmm.
and Bruce says a prayer for our fallen brothers and sisters, and they do City of Ruins. It I can imagine that, and that um, there are times when my family will play Dream Baby Dream, his version, and it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a meditation of just,
Mm-hmm.
having faith and believing in yourself. So, that is awesome.
Absolutely.
And based on, and I've kept you almost an hour, so we're going to wrap this up quick, but,
Okay.
I will have a link, where it's for the book, and then talk to me about the blog. You guys said, "Dear Bruce, the thing we wanted to say." Kind of summer.
Well,
I'm gonna
Kelly,
give a link, and Kelly wrote this, right?
okay, she did, and she was so rushed when she met him. And if you look at the picture, you can see on her face that she's totally stressed out
Yeah,
because she can't really tell him what she wants to tell him. So she wrote him this blog, and basically it's a way of letting him know what his music has meant to our family and to our daughter and to us in that really difficult time, and just
yeah,
thanking him.
yeah,
That's really what that's about, is just saying thank you.
yeah. And um, there, the Lynette Carolla is one of the reasons why I do this podcast, because she was doing a podcast for a while, and she had different people on, and one of the guys that is a partner with Adam Carolla told the story that um, he had cancer, and as he was getting treatment, he played that "All That Heaven Will Allow" over and over
Mm-hmm.
again because of the verse, "Now some may want to die young, man, young and gloriously. Get it straight now, mister. Hey, buddy, that ain't me. Because I got something on my mind that sets me straight and walking proud. I want all the time, all that heaven will allow."
Yep.
And once again, that wasn't the purpose of the lyric, I don't think. But
Right.
the beauty of Bruce's music, and I think all music, is we make it our own story.
Absolutely.
And so,
You know,
um,
there's
go
a
ahead.
line in I'm sorry, there's a line in Waiting on a Sunny Day where he just says, "Don't worry, we're going to find a way."
Yeah,
I'm sorry. That line really resonated with us because we had no idea how we were going to make it out of that place, but with our daughter. But that line just seemed to say, "We're going to find a way. We will figure out a way," and that just meant everything.
yes, I can absolutely imagine. And the reality is, you know, you can only control so much. And
That's true.
I thought it was kind of funny that Penn Jillette, a very known, very vocal atheist, just did a guest spot on a TV show, and I'm drawing the blank on now the name of it. But he played a magician, and he said, proof is easy, faith is hard damn work.
Yep.
And I I think that too. I think that um, believing it can't hurt, and it's the only way you can go through life. And you have a little miracle to prove that to you, don't you?
We do. We have somebody. We have this ferocious, wild, very very fierce little 5-year-old kindergarten student who loves Bruce and can't wait to go back and see him again.
That is awesome. If someone wants to reach you, I have Kelly's Twitter here. It's at Kelly, Kelley B French.
Yep,
The name of the book is Juniper, the Girl Who Was Born Too Soon.
yep.
You guys also do a blog, right?
We do on our website called juniperbook.com.
And so there's a way. Um, am I missing anything else? It doesn't look like you're a social media guy.
I do a little bit, not as much as Kelly. Like I said, Kelly's younger.
Okay.
She's a lot more adept at that, but I do
Yeah.
some.
Yeah. So what's the plans for the holiday?
Well, my sons are coming into town
Are they
with
proud of
their
their little
mom.
sister?
Oh, they're crazy about their little sister.
I can
And
imagine.
they're coming into town with their mom, and we're all going to spend a week here in Indiana and have a lot of fun and relax and listen to some Springsteen, I'm sure. And
Yes.
yeah, yeah, it's going to be
As
fun.
what did you think of the book from a scholastic, or could you look at it at a scholastic perspective or just from a fan's perspective?
Well, it's kind of weird, but I haven't finished reading it yet because Kelly and I are reading it aloud to each other.
Okay,
And our lives are pretty hectic, so we haven't gotten that far into it. But what I've read so far, I loved.
that's good. Very nice.
We're
Well,
looking forward to reading the rest of it.
yeah, it is, I finished it and I'm looking forward to hearing, I got the audiobook and I'm looking forward to hearing him tell his own story.
Yeah, that sounds really great.
We have a pretty good little Springsteen year. 2016, pretty cool year for us fans. And
Yeah,
he
I'm
got to
happy.
meet a pretty special little girl. Um, Tom,
Yeah, it's really great.
yeah, I bet she was. And I just love well, he wrote all these songs for me. Of course he knows who I am. I just love that cockiness and that joy. That's amazing. Um,
Yep.
so Tom, thank you so much. We're gonna
Jesse,
end.
thank you. This has really been a delight.
Well, thank you. This is, I am a firm believer that every Springsteen fan has a story. None, not all of them are as emotional as yours, but everyone, I believe his music affects us all in such a way. And so that's what the podcast is all about, is just collecting these stories together that we can share with each other. So,
Um,
thank you for taking
I'm
time.
honored to have. I'm honored to have had that chance. So thank you, Jesse.
No problem. When I get the book, I'm going to have you back on and we'll talk more. But for
That
now,
sounds great.
we're going to end with Hey Little Dolly, won't you say you will? Meet me tonight up on top of the hill.
Sunshine.
Just a
There
few
you go.
miles across the county line, there's a cute little chapel nestled down in the pines.
Yeah.
Say you'll be mine, little girl. I put my foot to the floor. Give me the word now, sugar. We'll go ramrodding forevermore.
Absolutely. Well done.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, listeners. We'll
Okay,
talk to you
Jesse.
soon.